Mr. Heston, we'd like you to get naked or down to your skivvies and be handcuffed to an old woman's ankle. He might be like, I'd like to talk to my agent. I don't. Okay, I'll do it. I guess I'll do it.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we ask, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Gene Lyons. Alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Kerri Gross.
Hello.
Together, we're going to take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. Each week, the audience selects from 6 movie choices, and we watch the movie that tallied the highest number of votes, or the movie you paid for. At the end of each podcast, we three will provide the audience with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective bums. So find a comfortable spot on the sofa and accompany us for a journey through our vast VHS movie collections. If you'd like to download Shat the Movies, you can download Shat the Movies via iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are found. Big D, very special commission this week. Tell us about it.
Well, this is actually a self-inflicted wound, is what I feel. One of our loyal listeners for a long time is Richard R., and he made a kind donation about 6 months ago now. And it was so generous that we said, you know what? Why don't you tell us a movie you'd want to watch and we can review it? And he goes, oh, okay, In the Mouth of Madness. You know, we were just so happy, to have a loyal listener, make a contribution, help us go. It looked good from the trailer. And now it doesn't look like such a good idea. But Richard loves the movie, so we did In the Mouth of Madness from 1994, and this one especially for you, Richard.
So Richard writes, I am the only child and very close to my cousins. In the summers, it was all very Goonies-esque adventures and such, and one of the things we did with our innumerable hours was watch horror movies. This movie blew our young minds, being one of the first stories we'd watched which dabbled in meta-fiction. The idea that the universe we were watching was, within its own narrative, a fiction, and that the protagonist was potentially written into existence by the antagonist, was way above the topless teen gets hacked to death by insert preferred weapon, which more typified our usual fare. It was also a gateway to H.P. Lovecraft, David Lynch, and others. Kerri has said that Labyrinth played in her house daily. In the Mouth of Madness sat in the back of my mind for a number of years, and just before my first son was born, it became available on Amazon Prime Video, so I bought it. At the time, I worked out of my apartment, so for the first 6 months of my son's life, I was almost full-time dad. I used to stroll him around the apartment complex with In the Mouth of Madness piped in my earbuds. I probably listened to the movie more times than I've seen it, so there's the setup. Now I'll try to disassociate myself from my nostalgia and give some pros and cons in the movie. Pros. 1, the music and score. John Carpenter's score gives this movie a distinct flavor. Without it, the movie would be bland. 2, the first and third acts. I think everyone prior to and after the Hobbs end is excellent. 3, Sam Neill and Jürgen Prochnow. The movie rests on Sam's shoulders, and I think he comes off as believable, if exaggerated, everyman who isn't really buying the supernatural elements of the story. Jürgen, as twisted Stephen King, gives off just enough of an otherness to be creepy. The, quote, my favorite color is blue bus scene is my favorite between the two. 4, pre-internet 1990s. The early 90s feels very similar to our world now. Well, to this Gen Xer anyway. But this movie could not be made today. Google Earth, ubiquitous cell coverage, ebooks. So in a way, this is an artifact of its time. Now the cons. 1, the second act. While there is a lot to like, this is where the movie felt the most unfinished and rushed. The town was surprisingly ill-defined. There was little in the way of investigation to find Sutter Cane. They just sort of went to this place and there he was. I felt like the movie should have kept the focus tight on John instead of including Linda as a POV character. It would have kept the audience guessing with John as to what is real or not. It's almost as if Carpenter decided John needed to retain his skepticism, so he used Linda to give exposure to the supernatural elements. Unfortunately, that gave the audience more info than John and created a distance between his journey and theirs. That's probably why I think the first and third acts are stronger. They track very closely to John's point of view. 2, the lack of actual horror. The movie plays with suspense and dread, but really stops short of depicting outright horror and madness. The movie just isn't that scary, even allowing for suspension of disbelief. So Richard's final score She says, In the Mouth of Madness got 2/3 of it right, but the 1/3 it didn't hurt the overall movie. I can see what Carpenter was trying to go for, but it didn't execute it nearly as well as others like David Lynch. This is a mid-grade horror movie which suffers from 90s blandness, but within its own genre and even compared to its sibling, The Thing, it is an enjoyable ride. While it doesn't scare as much as it should, it also doesn't overstay its welcome. I'd give it an unbiased 3 wipes. I'd give it a nostalgic 1.5 wipes.
Wow, I'm glad he wrote this because I was going back and forth with him today on Twitter, direct messaging, and I said, you got to give us something to work with here because I don't know that we're going to love this movie as much as you did.
I mean, I got to say that I really feel like now that we've read Richard's review and we've gotten his money, we could just call it a night. Wrap this up.
Thank you for coming. Next week, we are doing Best of Patrick Swayze.
All right. So anyway, So for those who are not familiar with In the Mouth of Madness, unlike Richard, it's a 1994 American psychological Lovecraftian horror film directed and scored by John Carpenter, starring Sam Neill, Julie Carmen, and Charlton Heston. Informally, the film is the 3rd installment in Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy, preceded by The Thing and Prince of Darkness. So, Big D, we'll start with you. Where were you when you first saw this movie, or what are your memories of this movie?
So I was a huge fan of early 80s and mid-90s horror. So I remember the trilogy very well. I was a big fan of Prince of Darkness, that green cylinder, the apocalyptic newscast that shows you footage from the future of the devil coming back. It gave me some nightmares. The Thing we already reviewed, and we loved it. We thought it was a work of art. This is the one that I don't think is as strong. I could remember seeing it because I knew all the pieces, but it just didn't stick in my mind. And watching it again today, I know why.
Kerri?
I'd never heard of this movie. I mean, I would consider myself a fan of horror and John Carpenter, but for some reason, when this got commissioned, I wasn't familiar with it. And it wasn't until this download that I watched it or knew anything about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I also never seen this movie before. I had heard of it. It was super popular among my friends in high school. And so I was really excited to see this finally and see what the buzz is about. I remember seeing it in the cult classics section at the video store. The name is kind of bigger than the audience that actually seen it. So I'm glad we got to do this together as a team.
Yeah, and you know what I think hurts it now looking at it? You said going to the video store. This was the age of Blockbuster. The cover art to me is terrible. If now you look at it, it's the book pages, it's the spirits coming out. But without a strong cover art, if I was walking through Blockbuster, I would walk by it as well.
Yeah, I would say it's probably John Carpenter's least known work of art.
So we know the cover wasn't that strong. Big D, why don't we check out the trailer?
This one will drive you absolutely mad.
The riots began because the stores could not meet the demands of Sutter Cane's novel, In the Mouth of Madness.
Cane disappeared 2 months ago without a trace.
You're the guy that writes horror books.
You can forget about Stephen King. Kane outsells them all. I need to know if he's alive or dead, and I need that book.
It's a setup. I just have to work out how it's set up.
Kane's writing has been known to have an effect on his readers.
See this? It's a map. This whole thing has been staged.
You just get out.
This is not reality.
It's all happening for real, Trent.
I know this book will drive people crazy.
Well, let's hope so. The movie comes out next month.
In the midst of an unspecified disaster, Dr. Wren visits John Trent, played by Sam Neill, a patient in a psychiatric hospital, and Trent recounts his story. It starts when Trent, a freelance insurance investigator, has lunch with a colleague who asks Trent to work on his largest insured. During their conversation, Trent is attacked by a man wielding an axe who, after asking him if he reads Sutter Cane, is shot dead by police officers. The man was Cane's agent, who went insane and killed his family after reading one of Cane's books.
So one of the things that makes this movie popular with Richard and with a lot of people is it has that Lovecraftian component that you don't know what's real. What's a vision? What's his madness? So the movie starts off where we're seeing the future events of John being taken into the insane asylum. And most of the movie is shown as a flashback to where he's straitjacketed. He's in the padded room. The doctor comes in, tells him he's insane. And then he's visited by someone who wants to find out how he got there. So as we go through, there's going to be a question of what we're watching. Is this real? Is this in the book? Is this his madness? I'm going to lay it out right now. I think anything beyond this opening scene that is in a flashback, we have to question whether it really happened or it's just his insanity.
Yeah, Big D, I wish this movie started in the insane asylum. Instead, it started with like a 2-minute montage of Sutter Cane's latest book being printed out and with like this weird metal soundtrack. And I worked in newspapers for more than a decade, and every night I would watch the papers come off the press. And that sound alone, it's kind of haunting. It's kind of spooky, very industrial. You could have just gone with that. But there's nothing metal about watching stuff come off the press. And I felt like already that disconnect between the visual and the auditory gave me like second thoughts about this movie. And then we get the first doctor, the first, warden or whatever, when John is brought into the insane asylum. And that performance between everybody in that scene was absolutely uncomfortable and bizarre. It was just not a good start for me. I wanted to turn back immediately.
Yeah, it didn't take long to sense what this movie was going to be. You know, that unworldly or that unnatural vibe is obviously the tone that they're going to try to get throughout the movie to make you question, are we seeing real life, or is this playing out in a version of the book or the movie? In the end, I'm going to kind of, harken back to this. I really think that even from the first frame, we are watching the in-world meta movie that is released about the book In the Mouth of Madness. So none of this is playing out as the characters that we're seeing him go through. There is no Sam Neill. This is always the actor, John Trent. But they have us questioning it from the beginning. And just as we go through it, I want to kind of just say that right off the bat, that I don't think it's as complex or as groundbreaking or as twisted that people have to, write a thesis on this. I think it's kind of, from the beginning, it's fairly clear what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just felt that would make some sense in the fact that if we felt like we were watching some sort of a B movie and it just really didn't work that well, but it's intentional, like the stiff performances are like, yeah, you're watching a bad movie. That's the whole point of it, or you're watching a horror movie. And it's commendable that they were able to do this at less than $10 million in 1994. But even so, you got to give the audience a little bit of a break, because I don't know if it was death or whatever that approached, Trent when he was in his cell, and like the horrible things that are happening while he's in his cell. Everything just looked and sounded cheap. And I think that you can tell us we're watching a movie without making it look and sound cheap. I even felt that it was sub-slasher quality. Richard talked about, teens getting hacked to bits. There were points where I was just laughing, like when the, I don't know if it was death or whatever that comes into the cell and says, "This is not the end. You haven't read it yet." It sounded like somebody just yelling into a coffee can. It was, I don't know, it didn't work for me.
Yeah, it seemed low budget. And we've seen a lot of Carpenter's work. We know his style. But the flash frames and the quick cuts that they use in that first vision that we see John having about, it cuts from a blood on the wall, screaming face. It was so rough that it didn't startle me or scare me visually. It just made me think about Game of Thrones, like Bran's visions, and how those made you wonder, oh my God, what did we just see? The sequencing flashes of images. This just made me be like, oh my God, there was an amateur editing this. But at least they try to balance it out with a little bit of humor that had me laughing in the beginning. You have some in-world, jokes where they play "It's Only Just Begun," and John says, "Oh no, not the Carpenters." Of course, John Carpenter, the director, and the song is terrible. Or the John screaming out, "I'm not insane. I'm not insane. Do you hear me?" And all the other cells in sequence, "I'm not insane either. I'm not insane either." So they were trying to at least lighten the mood. It wasn't just all quick edits, banging on the walls and really bad music.
You say they were trying to lighten the mood, but for me, as someone that's worked in like multiple psych units, had a psych rotation in nursing school, I'm always annoyed and offended by how they portray like crazy people and psychiatric wards in movies. Like there's such a Hollywood take on it that I'm just annoyed that it's like people in padded rooms and they're all singing the same song at the same time and declaring that they're not crazy. And like usually they're comatose or they're trying to fucking kill you or themselves.
I mean, but again, I think that might actually kind of go back to what Big D was saying and what Richard was indicating too. That might actually be intentional, right? If they are saying that this is a meta view of a movie that you're watching, they're like, this is how Hollywood portrays, crazy people. But I don't want to go full Roger here and give the movie too much credit because again, you need to make that clear in some sort of a way. It is the movie's job to make it enjoyable while also relating some sort of a meta message. And again, that goes to production quality. And for me, this is a movie that relies heavily on things that are said subtly, little sounds that go off in the background, and also, a lot of jump scares. And all that depends on good audio. The audio in this movie was all over the place. Conversations that you wanted to hear were too quiet. The crashes and the shrieks were too loud. Sometimes I swear they had the microphone on like across the room somewhere. And I don't think that was intentional. I think that this was just a failure to produce a quality movie.
How much of the budget do you think they spent on one giant black crayon? Because
I'm so glad you said that.
A single black crayon. He asked for something, a single black crayon. Well, what kind of black crayon? First of all, colors on skin. You have a child, right? Crayons don't go on skin.
No, especially, I wrote that down as well. I'm glad you spotted that. I said, how big is that fucking crayon? As a parent of a young child, and we have a bag of crayons, that would just not go on skin. You'd run out. He's on his clothes. How do you do an accurate cross and an iron cross on your own face without a mirror?
With a crayon.
Yes.
I think his request was actually, could I get a crayon, a mirror, a ladder, maybe 3 other guys to help me out, some designer pajamas.
Also, I mean, how many times I've had patients request things and it's like, yeah, no, this isn't a fucking hotel. This is the hospital. You're in a locked ward. We're not giving you anything, let alone a crayon for you to color on the fucking walls with.
And we led to believe that this asylum had like a variety of colors of crayons. You could have asked for the whole box.
Just black, please.
Yeah, just black.
Yeah, like what kind of a conundrum would John Trent be in if they're like, actually, we only have orange. I'm sorry. Burnt sienna. All right, so Arcane Publishing director Jackson Harglow, played by Charlton Heston, tasks Trent with investigating the disappearance of popular horror novelist Sutter Cane and recovering the manuscript for Cane's final novel. He assigns Cane's editor, Linda Stiles, played by Julie Carmen, to accompany him. Linda explains that Cane's stories have been known to cause disorientation, memory loss, and paranoia in less stable readers. Trent is skeptical, convinced that the disappearance is a publicity stunt. Trent notices red lines on Cane's book covers, which, when aligned properly, form the outline of New Hampshire and mark a location alluded to be Hobbs End, the fictional setting for many of Cane's works.
Okay, so, Richard mentioned that there's no way that this movie could be done today. Number one, who the hell would be waiting in line for books? Nobody. That wouldn't happen. There wouldn't be bookstores. But the bigger one is this cover art, right? The cover art is a great homage to the Lovecraftian covers of the day, and they look great. How would nobody notice that each one has this weird red line squiggled around it? If this cover art came out here in the internet world, Reddit would have this figured out within 4 minutes after the second book cover was published. There'd be no mystery.
And then 2 days later, Raj would have read it on Reddit and then regurgitated some theory that he read on Reddit about it.
Yeah, guys, it's clearly New Hampshire. You didn't get that?
Yeah, but then he would claim he does not go on Reddit quite a bit. Another one, and again, I understand. People are going to say, they usually say, the fans of this movie say, if you don't like it, you usually don't get it. I do get the movie. I understand what they're saying, but a lot of it just makes no sense. So Neill, who's playing the straight man, and he's the voice of reason, Neill is going to say, this is just a setup. I just don't know how yet. Neill, how the fuck does an axe attack and murder and police shooting? Is this all part of your promotional scam? Fuck you, Neill.
Yeah, I was, again, I understand that he's supposed to be this crack investigator and so that, nothing gets by him. But there's caution and there's skepticism, and then there's just being in denial of things. And I think that's where he swings in all this. And we get lots of really bizarre scenes to begin with. Like as soon as he starts reading any of Sutter Cane's stuff, you get these weird scenes. And one of them was this barrel burning scene where he's like, he keeps going by this alley. What city does this happen in? Like I've been all across the country. I was a kid in the 80s. I never saw anyone burning barrels in an alleyway.
Multiple barrels, like 5 barrels.
Yeah.
It wasn't just one.
And like 50s cop with the billy club just bonking people. Like at that point, if I was him, I go, what, they hired bums and a cop to beat people up? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and if we can go back to that axe attack for a minute, right? I thought the axe attack was cool. We see Sutter's agent coming across the street. In world, we're supposed to believe that he's the only one who's read the book. It's driven him mad. He hasn't read the ending, so he's going to try to stop John from getting the book into the real world and the ultimate apocalypse by letting the old ones in. So I understand that they're gonna try to make it look like the agent is trying to kill John to stop him, but they don't make that clear. He just looks like, he has that disease, the herpes. I think we'll call the madness like the herpes disease, because everyone just looks like they're just sores, less frightening, more. I just wanted them to get some, what is that cream you put on it? They sell at CVS.
Herpeside.
No, come on, Nurse Kerri. Like, what's that? Abreva. Come on, I've seen the commercials. Abreva. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a nurse, but I don't have herpes, so I'm not familiar with Abreva. It looks like they developed acne and then runny noses, and then sometimes pig face.
Yeah, but the thing is, Carpenter's monsters and ghouls and ghoulish people have never been quite that specific, which kind of is fun. Like in The Thing, you're like, what the hell is that? I don't even know what I'm looking at. I thought that this was a really missed opportunity, and I'm going to get in my director's seat here, or cinematographer's seat here. And you've seen movies that do a scene like this a lot better. And what you do is you have the two guys, they're sitting in the cafe, they're talking to each other, and silently, you don't address the thing in the background that's approaching, right? So it's just them having a conversation, and that guy's getting closer and closer with the axe. You don't focus on him and then cut back and forth. It ruins the surprise, right? Like it's much cooler if he's silently approaching and then suddenly just the axe comes up and he shatters the window. So I was really hoping that's where they're going with it. I was like, oh, this is going to look really cool. And then they absolutely blew it. Again, and we're going to check in several points here. I don't know about you guys, but I'm just like, stop. I'm done with this movie. And yet there was more to go.
I was secretly wishing that the axe attack would hit me, that I was going to be the one killed. And more it's leading me as you're talking that this is an in-world Hollywood movie that is intentionally bad, because John Carpenter's stuff with The Thing, which was in, what was it, 82? The Thing was 82. The special effects look better. It looked more believable. There's no way that he regressed this much in that time. This has to be in-world bad.
You were saying at 30 minutes that you were checking the time. I was checking the time at 15 minutes. And then after that, every 10 to 15 minute increments to just get through it.
Yeah. And with the effects, I can kind of forgive it. I mean, consider that The Thing was made in 82 on $10 million. So the same budget, right? But this is in 94, which is, things got a lot more expensive very quickly. And so you can forgive that, but that doesn't explain why the acting has to be bad. And that was the most distracting part for me in all of this. So I felt like I was watching an acting class put on by some like washed up hack. Like I took Theater 1 at Arizona State University. And this is worse than that. I felt like the interview parts when Sam Neill is grilling the guy who's trying to pull off insurance fraud. It was like, this is an interview. Here is how we interview. And then when he's on the phone pretending that he's talking to somebody, yeah. This is how you do a phone call with somebody else.
When Linda is in the office and she's like pulling off her glasses and folding her glasses and then putting the glasses in her mouth and chewing on the glasses and then putting the glasses back on her face, I'm like, this is like horror improv with lots of props. It's terrible.
Guys, was Linda supposed to be sexy?
I mean,
I was wondering.
She's like the Elaine from Seinfeld, where like not really sexy, but
I think we were supposed to wonder that same question because I looked at her and was like, I don't know.
Yeah, because she kept like doing the thing like Kerri mentioned, like she was putting the glasses in her mouth and stuff, and then you see that scene near the elevator where he gets like really close behind her, and there's kind of the booty and the crotch are off screen, so there might be a little bit of bump in there. And I'm just like, I'm not feeling it. It felt like one of my aunts. Like I was just not comfortable with it.
She loses the glasses, and then her hair is down later, so then she's less sexy.
But you talk about the interview there with Mr. Paul, who's burned his own warehouse. This was not a masterclass of interrogation. Guys, is it hot in here? Could we put on the AC? I'm sweating here, kinda. And then he drops the pictures on the desk. Come on.
I also am like, could you just show like him boning the lady? Like, does he have to? Look, she's got the same fur coats. It's like, yeah, actually, that's not that unreasonable. You can buy fur coats lots of places.
And I'm sorry, he has a warehouse where he keeps all of his wife's fur coats and jewelry in. Like, they don't keep those things in their house. He has a warehouse for them.
Well, I think that's his business. I think he sells fur coats and jewelry. But, Richard mentioned that he thought that the camera deviated too much from and left Sam too often. I disagree. I say you can tell Sam Neill had a hand in this movie because he's in every scene. And I never noticed this about movies, how often they cut from one character. Now, Heat is a good example. Heat, you're following one actor, then another actor, then another actor. Sam Neill is on the screen the whole time. There was a point in the movie where I was watching with King B. I turned over and I was like, I would seriously pay $5 right now for any scene not involving Sam Neill.
No, even when Sam Neill is having a conversation with another character, we don't see the other character. He's sitting on his couch reading the book, right? And the phone rings, he picks it up, and he says, "Hello, Mr. Robinson. Yes, I know that this is a scam." Any other movie what other movie can you think of that doesn't cut to actually seeing Mr. Robinson on his couch or in his office having the conversation? Instead of making the cuts, they have crazy exposition where he has to explain who's on the phone. So we get more Sam Neill.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I saw a movie like that was like the movies I made with my camcorder when in like 94 when I had no friends. It was just doing movies by myself.
Uh-huh.
Yes, let her in. I see you've worn your best tonight. So they set out to find the town. Linda experiences bizarre phenomena during the late night drive, and they inexplicably arrive at Hobbs End in daylight. Trent and Linda search the small town, encountering people and landmarks described as fictional in Kane's novels. Trent believes it all to be staged, but Linda disagrees. She admits to Trent that Arcane Publishing's claim was a stunt to promote Kane's book, but the time distortion and exact replica of Hobbs End were not part of the plan.
I started questioning, can Sam Neill act? We just assume he can act because, he's been in a lot of movies we love. He's got 133 acting credits in IMDb, but he so obviously, if you look at his scroll of movies, he will take any job. That scene with the potato chips in the car where Linda throws the bag at him, that was bad improv. He either does not want to be there and he's mailing it in, or he's intentionally playing bad Hollywood.
Was the horn in the glove compartment improv too? Because that seemed like just a dick move out of nowhere. The only thing I could understand about the horn was that it's meant to show us that Trent is actually nuts.
No, who fucking carries around one of those horns unless you're Harpo Marx? Like, who does that?
Well, I thought it was a rental.
Cars have horns. Like, why the fuck would you pull one out of your glove box? And then it was like a clown horn. It wasn't like an air horn.
I think it was a bicycle horn for the last two bicyclists they hit. They're just like collecting parts.
That's from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. That's fucking right in the center of Pee-wee's handles. Yeah, but Sam Neill, there's no doubt that if he was mailing this in, he has to think, I'm Sam Neill. I was in fucking Jurassic Park. I was in Hunt for Red October. I was in The Piano. It won 3 Oscars. I was in Event Horizon. Roger's favorite movie, The Horse Whisperer. How the fuck did I get in this movie? I'm firing my agent.
Was this before Jurassic Park? This was 94. Jurassic Park
this is after. Jurassic Park was 93.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, think about that. Just let that set in a little bit.
Sucks.
This is also before GPS.
Oh my God. So that leads me to ask this question of you guys. We talk about how you couldn't make this movie today. Without GPS, that was back in the day when you had to just figure out where you were going. You two are younger than I am. If today we had to do away with one technology, would you eliminate texting or would you eliminate GPS?
I mean, considering 90% of the time when Kerri and I fight, it's over text, I would say that definitely GPS. I want GPS, rather. I would eliminate texting. I actually am not a big fan of texting, and I do believe this firmly, that if we had texting first, like we're like, all we have is the technology to send text messages, which basically was pagers. Then they invented the phone, and remember we were all like, holy shit, now you can have like a phone conversation. Fuck pagers. And then they were like, but you can also type on the phone. We're like, oh yeah, back to that. Let's do that.
Kerri?
I don't use GPS a whole lot, honestly.
Well, hey, I'm going to put this Amazon. Your deliveries wouldn't get there as quick. You wouldn't have all of your delivery pizza. It would affect a lot of things besides you just using Waze.
I don't do a lot of that. I'm not like a Luddite, but I also think, like Gene was saying, a lot of my text messages get misconstrued, and so it's annoying. I'd rather have a conversation on the phone. So I guess I'd give up text messaging.
One of the things Kerri will do, she's so anti-GPS that if you're driving somewhere, I like to put the address that I'm going to into the navigation because I like to see like if there's traffic ahead or anything else that might get in the way that might be a better route. But you will get the most judgmental look like, oh, you need the GPS. You don't know where you're going. Like, no, I've lived in Arizona since I was 2 years old. I get it.
No, I like it as well. I like to help out and report obstacles in the road. I like that.
Oh, you use Waze? You're a Waze guy?
Yeah, I'm a huge...
Oh,
you kidding me? I'm up there. I'm ranked like in the top 900 in the U.S.
You know that's Israeli tech.
Yes, I do. There was a small investment firm. I think they launched it with $1 million seed capital, and then it was bought now by Google.
So they're looking for so long. It looks like they're searching for Hobbs End for like, I don't know, a week. And so I was like, okay, so how big is New Hampshire? Because like they're just driving around looking for it. He literally put together a thing and went, there's a dot over there. There's a city that is on no map. Let's go look for it. New Hampshire is 68 miles wide by 190 miles long. So I'm wondering, like, that's a lot of surface area to cover. That's like 3,000 square miles or something like that, 4,000 square miles. You're just going to drive around until you find the place?
Yeah, plus the scrapping covers. That was like a third of the state. So you're just going to go into a general area, but they don't know where they're going. And they're obviously not paying attention to the road because they end up hitting that poor biker.
Yeah, that was super weird. And so they hit the biker takes off, who at one point is like a child, and then twice is an old, creepy, pig-faced person. But who in their right mind would let Linda drive after hitting this person in the middle of the highway? Like, wouldn't she be a little shaken up, and shouldn't he be like, well, I'll drive the rest of the way because you just fucking hit a person and nearly killed them? And then also, wouldn't he be worried that like maybe she wasn't safe enough to be driving if she's just hitting people in the middle of the fucking highway while he's asleep?
The bicyclist, I think we're led to believe it's a young boy and then an older version of that same person. Did you notice who the biker is, who the kid is?
Matt Damon.
Nope. Kerri, any guesses?
Hayden Christensen.
Fuck you. You're reading my notes. Yes, it is Hayden Christensen.
Well, no, I read the notes earlier and I was like, Hayden Christensen's debut. I also saw on IMDb and I was like, who the fuck was Hayden Christensen? So it wasn't until you just said that I was like, oh, it wasn't the cross-eyed kid that opened the church that looked like he drank lamp oil. It must be the kid on the bike.
Yeah.
But I mean, it took me a second to put that together too, because I was like, okay, we saw a boy. Now there's some old lady that got hit by a car. What's the connection? And then I didn't realize until like he says something as he's leaving, and then I'm like, that's a dude. Oh, it's an old dude. Oh, and then he's like, I can't get out. I was like, oh, I get it. Okay, he's on some sort of a bike riding loop.
So what they're implying is he's on a bike riding loop and they're on a driving loop, and so they encounter him when he's young, but also when he's old. I
think they're saying that Hobbs End is somewhere out of time. You know, things are, it's taking up the place of multiple times. But the joyriding loop, to me, it wasn't tense. It was tedious. You know, I didn't like it. And the special effects were laughable. It looked like planes, trains, and automobiles, where Linda like looks out the window and she can see clouds below the tires. I was like, where the fuck are they going? At what point do you just stop the car? You're like, okay, either I'm really tired or something's gone on here. Let's stop the car.
So during this scene, I'm watching it with King B, and for about the last 3 minutes of it, he's just going, and then finally when they come out of the bridge and it's daylight, he goes, the disorienting bridges of Madison County. And that was my favorite part of the movie. So, but it really did highlight the fact that some of these supernatural scenes, like Bicycle Man or the painting that keeps moving around or driving through the sky, they would actually be spooky if it wasn't for the horrible acting and sound. Like you could see, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I often will pick at his work, but David Lynch has done things like this scene and they were fucking freaky. Like it's like you don't feel right. Something's very uncomfortable. And I think it's just a lack of imagination. And I can't believe I'm saying that about John Carpenter, who typically is very good at imagination.
So I'm wondering if it's that they're implying, like we'll get to at the end, that this is all a movie within a movie, because it can't be this bad. Like the acting cannot be this bad.
It has to be. Linda, you're driving the car through the bridge. It's night. It's daytime. Now John wakes up. Oh, I've been sleeping all night. Yeah, we got here. Linda, how about you turn to him and go, no, dude, it's been like 10 minutes. I just drove through this crazy ass disorienting Bridges of Madison County tunnel, and now it's in daylight. He's supposed to be with you there on a trip. Feed him some information. And she's hiding shit all the way up until they get to the hotel. She's not completely honest.
Yeah, no, if I was driving somewhere and I saw a coyote on the side of the street, I would slap the person next to me like, wake up! Did you just see that? Let alone hallucinating that I'm flying a fucking car through the sky and like creepy old men. For the third time, I've seen the same old person on a bicycle. You know damn well I'd wake the person up and be like, you have to see this. This is not real right now. I'm hallucinating.
Yeah, somebody fucking spiked my drink. But then they finally get to the hotel, so we think we're going to get some information. And there's an actress there who I actually love, Mrs. Pinkman. Frances Bay is the actress, and she's fantastic. We've done a lot of senior actors lately, and if you remember Frances Bay, it was Happy Gilmore's grandmother. She was on Seinfeld, where she played the woman with the rye. So she's a great actress. There's a lot of actors here who are quality. They've done great work. So I don't think it's by accident that they're possibly all giving their worst performance in the same film.
She was a highlight of this movie for me, probably the only thing I liked about it. And when I saw her, I'm like, this woman is in 5 David Lynch things. And I looked her up, and she's in Twin Peaks, and she's in Fire Walk with Me. She's in Blue Velvet. She's in Wild at Heart, and then she's in X-Files and Quantum Leap. So she's just like a queen of creepy, eerily, but quirky, funny things. And so seeing her in this was a highlight for me.
Yeah, she was also in an episode of Hannah Montana in 2006. She played Kathy. Great work.
Great work.
Wait, so 2006, that would have been...
She died in 2011.
Before your daughter was born. Why were you watching Hannah Montana?
It's just one of those things. I like to broaden my horizons. I like a diverse portfolio of entertainment.
Fucking Scandinavian veterans. Anyway, Linda enters a church to confront Kane, who exposes her to his final novel, In the Mouth of Madness, which drives her insane. A man warns Trent to leave, then commits suicide in a bar. Outside the bar, a mob descends upon Trent. He drives away from Hobbs End, but is repeatedly teleported back to the center of town. After crashing his car, Trent awakens inside the church with Linda, where Kane explains that the public's belief in his stories freed an ancient race of monstrous beings which will reclaim the earth. Kane reveals that Trent is merely one of his characters who must follow Kane's plot and return the manuscript of In the Mouth of Madness to Arcane Publishing, furthering the end of humanity. Okay, so we've discussed that Trent is overly skeptical. We've discussed that he's not the most likable guy. But I found an additional trait that I can't stand about this guy. And that in the worst scenarios, he always just has to go sit down or lie down. So in this scenario, Lisa is missing. The old lady is creeping you out. The town is falling apart. Everything's going berserk. And you just go lie down for a bit. Later in the movie, when he sees the innkeeper hacking at a tentacle, he goes upstairs and then just stops. Like, I'm running the fuck out of town. His reactions just aren't believable.
And the crazy thing is, he's the one who knows all of these characters are in the books that he's read. So he knows that Mrs. Pinkman hacks her husband up in the basement. He says when they check in, oh, she's the one who turns her husband into coleslaw in the basement. He's always got to have time for a second to sit back and smoke. And you mentioned that Linda's now missing. Before Linda goes missing, she has that awkward ass seduction scene. Like, what was that? Where he's like, I'm going to get out of here. She's like, I can't do this alone. And she like grabs him and tries to kiss him. What was that about?
First, they'd been in the town for like 20 minutes, and they start seeing these things that are obvious depictions of what's going on in the novel. And she was like, we have to find the manuscript and finish it. It's like, how the fuck did she know that? Like, they just got there, and all of a sudden she knows how they're going to get out of this loop that they don't even realize they're in yet, and then starts making out with him.
So did you guys find any of this stuff scary, though?
No, not scary at all. The painting changing was less scary than the haunted hotel at Disney. This movie is the least scary movie I've seen ever.
Now, kids are creepy inherently if you get a bunch of them together, right? It's hard. If you just had kids stand there and just stare at you and tilt their head side to side like a dog, that would be creepy. Children of the Corn, these are relatively normal kids just standing in the cornfield before they hack you up. It's easy to make kids creepy. These kids were not creepy.
Okay, I got to disagree on one point. Is as I was watching the scene where they like kick the soccer ball at her, and my like the hair on my arm started to stand on end, and I was like, wait a minute, am I finally being creeped out by something? And it's when the kid's like, it's mommy's day, and then I realized it was just a child saying the word mommy that scared me. I was like, oh no, I can't do this. But I thought that was like the closest this movie got to spooky was the kids.
Yeah, but why don't they show later? We see later on as the kids start to herp out. You know, they start to have the outbreak around their mouth. The kids are chasing a dog through town. First time we see the dog's pretty quick. It gets away. Later on, we see that the dog is now a tripod. The kids have eaten the leg off the dog. All you have to do is show the kids, a couple of them, catch the dog, kind of like zombies hunch over and start chewing on the dog, and then the dog runs away. That would have been enough to creep us out.
I just thought it was cute, but, you know, I'm the hipster goth that collects $4,000 three-legged animals.
I mean, if there was a strength to this movie, it was the prevalent use of dogs. I appreciate that at least. And when we finally see Sutter Cane for the first time and he like unleashes the hounds or whatever, I couldn't help but think of like Mega Man video games. Like he's like a boss and his power is just to release Doberman pinschers. And then all the town folk, they're armed with weapons. They somehow cannot take on like 6 dogs, and one of the guys can't even figure out how to get in a car. Like he's literally running from the dog, and King Pete just yells out, he's like, that's not how you get in a car. And I rewound, I was like, that's not how you get in a car. Like he was behind the door that he was trying to get inside of. It made no sense.
All those people getting attacked by the dogs clearly had on that police training, like dog safety outfits too. It was like, none of this is fucking believable. The faces, the like clayed masked on faces that are half falling off. I'm like, come on, special effects. It was 1994, 95. There was more believable shit going on at the time.
Kind of to Kerri's point about prosthetics. Again, I'm going to drop a science bomb on you guys. It's going to blow your minds. Terminator 2 came out 3 years before this movie. Just think about that.
Yeah, that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. Yeah. The special effects, we talked about it. That old lady octopus, Mrs. Pinkman, it's so clear that that's a miniature. All this is adding up. It can't be by accident. But you talked about one thing I want to say is that they criminally underutilized that actor, Wilhelm von Homburg. That is Vigo, the Carpathian from the second Ghostbusters. How do you not? That guy is creepy just getting up in the morning. He could just say, I would like a cup of coffee, and it would be creepy as fuck. And you have him doing almost nothing.
Yeah, you pick him as the guy that we're supposed to feel sympathy for. Like, yes! Miscast.
Exactly.
He would have been creepy without all the shit on his face. Like, he could have just been a normal person with maybe a little bit of the herpes, and it would have been creepy, but just all of the makeup was terrible.
Yeah, and just like kids, old people are creepy inherently. They're just, all you have to, if you get an old man, like in tighty whities, like old baggy tighty whities, he's wrinkled, they look creepy like the man in that old Metallica video. I'm going to date myself again. But when we see that Mrs. Pinkman has her husband naked on the floor behind the check-in counter, and he's handcuffed to her ankle, and she's kicking him, being like, hush, hush. Just that naked, frail man, that might be the single scariest thing we've seen in this movie.
I didn't find it scary at all. Like, I knew it was trying to be weird, but and like make me uncomfortable, but it did nothing. Like, for some reason, it was such a miss.
It's because you're excited by the thought of having a man on the ground in his tighty whities handcuffed to your ankle.
It's true.
Especially an old man.
I do like older men.
Can we get back to how unlikable John Trent is? Because he has, among other habits, being skeptical, lying around a lot. This dude is like the worst mansplainer in the world. He spends the entire movie just mansplaining to Linda. At some point, she gets tired of it. And again, I think that we're supposed to sort of sympathize with this character or root for him. And all I kept thinking was, why can't they make Linda smarter? to like make him look dumb, and then that way, I guess sort of his character would make more sense. It just didn't work out for me. And Linda is so stupid that she's a professional editor. And she walks up to a building that has on the door, it's like, this is the house of the damned. Anyone who enters here is doomed. and she just runs in there like, it's cool. Goes in there, and then there's the upside down cross, which King B pointed out. He's like, someone's got to have a talk with that contractor. But like, literally, this is just a movie that you need to lampoon, and maybe that's what Richard was trying to give us a gift with.
I don't know. They both look pretty stupid when she's swallowing that set of keys, and then he's trying to pull them out of her mouth. Like, what? She would totally bite his fingers. You would never do that.
Okay, well, again, I understand for people who are going to say, we don't get it. We don't get it. Yes, the character of Linda is written by Sutter Cane in the book to help lead John Trent to find the town, to get the manuscript, to bring it back. And once she's done her job, he writes her out, and that's why later she doesn't exist. We get that. But she's an idiot, like Gene said. Who's going to eat the keys? And by the way, side note, those were made out of pasta, so she actually did eat those keys. But at least John, the first thing he does right is when he's trying to get her to come back with him on that annoying loop where, hey, there's kids, let's turn around, let's drive out of town. Hey, we're back, there's kids, let's turn around. After the third time, I said, run over the kids. But he turns around and just punches Linda square in the face and knocks her out. I'm like, it's about time that John takes this situation seriously.
Also, how awful and creepy is it when, this might be the only thing that I find creepy, but in that cheesy kind of creepy way, when she turns into that like claymation bending backwards with her head spun around weird character on the street.
But hold on. I know you don't work in the movie industry, and neither do I. I could see instantly what that was. I was like, oh, that's somebody turned over backwards, walking like a crab crawl with a mask put inverted on their face. There was no trickery there. I knew exactly what he did.
There was lots of bubble wrap pretending to be cracking bones, too.
Yeah, I didn't find it creepy. I just thought it looked like a bad high school special effect. I could do that with Gene if we went out and got a William Shatner mask and filmed it in my driveway with him like crab crawling.
I really think we should take the time to actually remake some of these scenes for Richard. Like with the budget he gave us, I think we can make something about the similar quality.
Our listeners have been begging for YouTube content. This might be
This is it.
We're just going to start remaking the shitty movies we have to watch.
I mean, Raj and I both own green screens. We can make this happen.
Oh, yes.
So after giving Trent the manuscript, Cane tears his face open, creating a portal to the dimension of Cane's monstrous masters. Trent sees a long tunnel that Cane said would take him back to his world and urges Linda to come with him. She tells him she can't because she has already read the entire book. Trent races down the hall with Cane's monsters close on his heels. He trips and falls, then suddenly finds himself lying on a country road, apparently back in reality. During his return to New York, Trent destroys the manuscript. Back at Arcane Publishing, Trent relates his experience to Harglow. Harglow claims ignorance of Linda. Trent was sent alone to find Cane, and the manuscript was delivered months earlier. In the Mouth of Madness has been on sale for weeks, with a film adaptation in post-production. Trent is arrested after he murders a reader of the newly released novel who has altered eyes and a nosebleed.
Okay, so I understand at this point, as a viewer of the movie, we're supposed to be like, what? Oh my God, this is months later? Linda wasn't real? Oh my God. This wasn't The Sixth Sense. This wasn't I See Dead People. This was really bad. And I think it has something to do with they had budget problems. So they originally got $15 million to make the movie. Then it got cut down to 10 or a little bit below. And it affected a lot of the third act. There was a big action sequence that they were going to film where the entire town is swallowed up and sucked into the book, but they couldn't do it. So instead they did that really bad. Remember, this is 94, like you said, where the door is kind of folding back and it doesn't quite match up. The shadows are all off. So maybe the fact that this ending is a little bit weaker has to do with that budget cut, but it just looked bad. You could see the Mouth of Madness is that long tunnel as they're running. It didn't frighten me. It didn't scare me. It didn't make the hair stand up on my neck. It was just drawn out. And I was begging that I could be like Linda and be written out of this book.
Yeah, if you're having trouble animating that hellhole or that hellmouth, maybe don't get closer to it. The whole time I'm like, they just established that you want to go that way to go back to your world. And you're like, oh, let me go check. He goes to check it out. He goes to look down the hole. I'm like, dude, run. Like, this guy just does not feel threatened, or he just doesn't understand fear. Like, I don't get it. Is that part of his investigator, like, steel core?
I also didn't understand, like, the monsters. You know, this whole time we've had these humans and, you know, the children and adults that were becoming insane and developing herpes and eating dogs. And then now we've got these monsters that are crawling out of this hallway. There was like no cohesive idea of what the fucking evil in this movie was.
Okay, so I'm shocked that I'm going to have to be the one to do this. I was expecting you guys to just come in here guns a-blazing with Lovecraftian knowledge. So I'll break it down here. So Lovecraftian horror, it's a subgenre of horror fiction and emphasizes the cosmic horror of the unknown. And more than gore and other elements of shock, though they may be still present, is the author who was named H.P. Lovecraft. So he wrote these books, and all of them revolve around questioning your reality and what's real. But all of them have these characters, and they call them the Great Old Ones. And it's a sect of demons that are in deep hibernation, and they're waiting for the right situation so that they can break through and sneak into the real world and reclaim it. So behind that bulging rubber door, we're supposed to believe it's the Great Old Ones, or the Old Ones. As they finally break through, we see them running down the hall. But as you're also infected by the madness, you slowly transform as well. Again, they don't do a great job of explaining that. They just expect that you would know it. And with the amount of exposition that Sutter Cane gives him about how his powers were forged, and just give a couple of minutes to talk about the Old Ones, it would have helped.
So they're like the flare leg genes of the demon world. Just every 1,000 years they rear their ugly heads and pop up. Yeah, I mean, I get Lovecraftian, Cthulhu, and all that. Listen, you don't pigeonhole us because we're goths. It doesn't mean that we love Lovecraft. It's a good club, though. So if there's anything kind I'm going to say about this movie, I will say that when it came to the car looping back around, or Trent finding himself in the confessional booth, or, when he's on the bus and he everything is blue, at this point in the movie, I'm starting a little bit to feel Trent's despair. In all this madness, you want something solid to hold on to, like a chance to catch your breath. You just didn't want all this crazy shit to keep happening. And it honestly did make me stop for a second and feel more aware of how insanity leads to violence toward yourself or others. I could feel his frustration, and I was getting frustrated too watching this movie. And I just felt like, I get why people who have a lack of a grasp on reality, or if their reality doesn't seem stable, how they want to hurt other people or hurt themselves. There is a core human response to that when you get down to it, the answer seems to be violence, because there's nothing else to turn to. And so that, to me, gave me a slight appreciation of the movie.
Yeah, and I got to respect what Carpenter's trying to do here. That he's attempting to tackle some sort of overarching big idea. He draws a parallel between religious texts like the Bible and the strength that it has over the herd who read it and that they believe them, and that this horror novel is supposed to be able to tap into that same hive mind consciousness. And to the point that it would become interchangeable with your own perspective and physical existence. I think he's talking a lot about religion here also as a subtext, saying that people will believe things that they read in the Bible, that there's no way that could exist in the real world, and that this power could also be twisted and used for bad. I respect what he's trying, but you're not going to do that in a 90-minute low-budget horror film. And he doesn't do it exactly subtly. It's like a sledgehammer. If you ever want to see a good movie that deals with questioning your own reality and consciousness and what's going on, are you having a mental psychotic break? Watch Jacob's Ladder. Jacob's Ladder with what was his name? Nuke LaLoosh. It was
Tim
from Shawshank. Yeah, Tim Robbins.
Yeah, Tim Robbins. Yeah.
Tim Robbins, he plays, and I'm not going to give you away any of it. He plays, I think it's a war veteran who's questioning, and does he have PTSD? Has he had an injury? It is exceptional. It will make you leave the movie wondering your own sanity, whereas this didn't even scratch the surface of that.
And I think both of them do give you a definite answer at the end, though, which I also appreciated. It didn't have to be like an open-ended thing like Inception, where this actually gives you an answer, and they're very different. Jacob's Ladder's answer to this, but you got to feel for, again, you mentioned the cast of this movie, like people who are trapped in this piece of garbage. Sam Neill, it honestly makes me like Jurassic Park less. And then poor Charlton Heston got roped into this.
Oh my God. This man was in Ben-Hur. This man's won an Academy Award. He was in the 10 Commandments. And he was in The Mouth of Madness. Does he need a paycheck? Is he living in like an assisted living home? Why is he doing this?
I think to a guy like Charlton Heston at this point in his career, you're like, you're the boss in this movie. You're the boss. And he's like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. You put on a suit, you tell somebody what to do. And it's an easy paycheck, but also it's a dignified role. He didn't have to do anything weird in this movie. If they're like, Charlton Heston, we want you to draw with crayons in your face, he's going to tell you to fuck off. You're going to have to rip the crayon out of my cold, dead hands.
Yes. Mr. Heston, we'd like you to get naked or down to your skivvies and be handcuffed to an old woman's ankle. He might be like, I'd like to talk to my agent. I don't. Okay, I'll do it. I guess I'll do it.
I think because it had, John Carpenter's name, attached to it. I mean, I would definitely be in a John Carpenter movie, but this movie sucks. I think it's just the exception to his rules. It's bad.
All right, guys, we're in the home stretch. Dr. Wren, now we're back in present day, judges Trent's story a meaningless hallucination. Trent wakes the following day to find the asylum abandoned. He departs as a radio announces that the world has been overrun with monstrous creatures, including mutating humans, and that outbreaks of suicide and mass murder are commonplace. Trent goes to see the In the Mouth of Madness film and discovers that he is the main character. As he watches his previous actions play out on screen, including a scene where he insisted to Linda, quote, "This is reality," Trent begins laughing hysterically before breaking down crying, finally realizing he was a character in the book all along.
Okay, so this is where we're going to talk about what we think this movie has been. They're breaking the fourth wall, and this isn't the first film to do it, and it's become more popular lately, but if you look at the marquee, when he finally gets out, he goes to the theater. The marquee matches the real world. It shows that it's a John Carpenter film. It shows that it was starring. This is the only difference. It doesn't say Sam Neill. It says John Trent. It says Linda Stiles, Jackson Harlow, and it was written by Michael DeLuca, which it was. All the marquee matches. I think that this entire movie, from minute one to the very end, is the movie that was shown in world for In the Mouth of Madness. So don't question, was the first scene in the asylum real, and then it was all delusion, and then it comes to the end. I think the entire thing is an in-world meta film that we're watching that was meant to be the visualization of Sutter Cane's book.
I thought the movie was going to take a really strong turn at the asylum scene, and I was really proud of John Carpenter for what he had done. I thought that initially when John Trent walks out of that room and the door is, unlocked out of his cell and there's blood on the walls and everything like that, that he's left to wonder. I thought there were going to be bodies everywhere, and he was left to wonder, did some monster come through here and kill everyone except me, or am I the one who did this? And I thought the cops would show up, maybe arrest him, and then you're wondering yourself, is he crazy? Did he kill everyone because he's a nutbag? Or is he being dragged out into this world that Sutter created, and and that he's now going to be exposed to what Dr. Wren told him was worse is out there, basically that, or what he told Dr. Wren was worse is out there. But I think at the end we are essentially to believe that Trent was just a character. And Big D, I understood it slightly differently. So from what I understood is that Sutter had this power of creation that was manifested in belief. And so Trent was a character from the book that was made flesh. And I think that was evidenced by the fact that he had no backstory. He had no family. He had no home. That you never see any of that in the movie. And he can't even work for somebody full time. He's a freelancer. And I think that he's so good at his job because he's written that way. And then he's used as an instrument of evil. So it seemed like he was like the, sort of the delivery or sort of the gate to everything else. But again, I could be off. It's so out there at points that it's hard to really pin it down.
I'll be honest. At this point, I was like, I don't even fucking know what's going on anymore. I fast forwarded towards the end just to get through it.
No, don't say that. Richard paid for this. Why are you going to do that for Richard?
I'm sorry, Richard.
You could say you dozed off. Maybe that's better.
I was reading a book while also watching it.
Were you doing your nails?
No.
Yeah. So one of the things I like what you're saying, Gene. I don't think it's that deep. I mean, yes, Linda, she's not there because she was written out of the book after she served her purpose to get John to take the manuscript back. And that was always his mission, to bring it back. But who the hell then, after he burned the copy, how did the other copy then miraculously get delivered to him in the motel? There's other players that are playing a role in this that we don't see. I just have to believe the whole thing. I think the whole thing was a movie. And they foreshadow the ending where Linda's in the car and they're going on the ride. And she says, what's reality? What's insanity? What's sane? If the insane become the majority, then that becomes sanity. And what would happen if you went mad and you were the only one left to know? That's exactly what happens at the end here. Linda's telling him the ending of the movie. I think what we're seeing is on screen. And I just think it would have been even better if in world the marquee had said Sam Neill, and Sam Neill was actually on the opening scroll of In the Mouth of Madness. That would have been even more meta.
Yeah, it just made me never want to eat popcorn again. There's something very unnerving about that scene. But as we come to the end of the movie, we come to the end of this podcast, and it is time, my friends, to pull out the old Shat meter and give this movie a Shat score. Again, a reminder, our scores go a little bit backwards. So 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is a clean break from reality with absolutely flawless, perfect storytelling, perfect movie making. And a 5 is a herpy kid. It is got pustules on its face. Its eyes are sunken in, and it's calling you mommy. So we'll start with you, Big D. What is your score for In the Mouth of Madness?
This movie, to me, and again, I was a fan of John Carpenter's movies. I just think this one was just poorly executed. John Carpenter didn't write this movie, so maybe he's not the best at directing other people's work. And we're supposed to believe it's this big meta reveal of, what's really happening, where we as the audience and Sam Neill as the actor and John Trent are questioning what's going on, questioning our insanity. I didn't find that at all. There's other movies that have done this 1,000% better and simpler, that make you question leaving the movie. And I think that's what they wanted, was it to be something profound that you would go tell your friends, hey, you're not going to believe this mind-blowing movie I just saw. You're not going to see. None of that happened because it didn't succeed. If I could give this 19 wipes, I would give this 19 wipes. This had me question my reality. I was going to write Richard and say, Richard, if I gave you back your money plus 10%, can I uncommission this? I want it to get an axe in the side of my head. And it wasn't because I didn't get it. It's just, it was poorly executed. It seemed lazy. People didn't want to be there. And as a result of this, I'm going to watch this weekend Jacob's Ladder, again, just to confirm what I saw on screen today is a pale comparison and a much better movie in the same genre.
All right, thanks, Big D. That's 5 wipes from Big D, or 18.9 wipes?
I was even thinking about changing the rule, like on America's Got Talent. My wife watches it, where you get a golden buzzer. Like out of every 100 movies, we each get a 10 wipe, something we can just drop. But yeah, 5, because that's all I can do.
All right, so it's 5 wipes for Big D. Kerri Gross, what is your Shat score for In the Mouth of Madness?
So a lot of people give me shit for liking Twin Peaks because, as they say, they just don't get it. Things don't make sense. Things are weird just for the sake of weirdness. The acting is kitschy and often considered bad. But those people should have to sit through something like this, where I think that they might have been inspired by Lynch in that sense of wanting to give you an uncomfortable feeling without laying it out in front of you what you're supposed to be afraid of or creeped out by. But this isn't executed well at all. It's the least scariest movie I've ever seen. The acting is terrible, whether it's intentional or not. I was dying for it to be over. I kept looking at my watch literally every 10 minutes, was trying to get through it. This is my day off. I haven't had one in a very long time, and this is what I spent doing. The only thing I did enjoy about this movie is the occasional execution of John Carpenter's creepy sounds and soundtracks. So for me, it's a 5 wipe. It's terrible.
All right, so 2 perfectly bad scores out of Big D and Kerri Gross, and I guess I'll round it out. I'm going to be the optimist here. I think that this is by.
Hold on. Before you go there, okay, I want the audience to know Gene has never given a 5. Never, ever. His worst scores were Labyrinth, Willow, Speed 2 at 4.5. If you give this...
So what would be a 5 wipe?
What would be a 5 wipe for you?
5 wipes for me would be Faces of Death, any of the Faces of Death movies. Gosh, what is... I don't think I've seen a movie so bad that it warrant a fight. Maybe Cowboys and Aliens. Maybe.
Oh, but at least there was some visual component of that you could say, hey, they succeeded. It looked kind of cool. What did they succeed in this movie?
I will tell you, Big D. So I want to start by saying this is by far the least enjoyable movie I've ever watched on Shat the Movies. Like, I did not enjoy any part of this, but it's not utter crap. And what it did was, although I didn't enjoy it, I did experience a sliver of how insanity feels, and they did a good job of pushing that. And I think that the overall idea of what they were trying to do was admirable and just not well executed, which is to say that there were parts of it that were at least worthy of discussion, that were a bit provocative. And I could see this movie being a reboot, like a remake of this, and it actually working is I guess there's the bones there of something pretty good. But it's just not well done at all. And so, yeah, I'd like to say that it's, for me, it's a 4 wipe movie. So it's not.
You're so full of shit. Listen, you gave a 4. Okay. Is this better than Christmas Vacation?
I did not enjoy Christmas Vacation.
Is this better than Revenge of the Nerds?
I did not enjoy Revenge of the Nerds.
Is this better than Twister?
No, this isn't better than Twister. I enjoy Twister more than this. But what I'm saying is that there are some limits being pushed in this movie in the year 1994. And again, based on the budget that was there, based on what they were trying to pull off, I think that it's not utter crap. You know, I will modify to a 4.5, but it's not all terrible. There is something salvageable in here. And I just don't think it's absolute crap. It's just not good.
Salvageable into a remake of a new movie?
Yes, that's the new criteria. Is this movie salvageable?
Can we make this a better movie by making it a different movie?
I'm saying that it wasn't
Yes.
it wasn't an utter waste of time to me. I just didn't like watching it. And there's a difference there.
I don't know what that difference is.
I don't either.
You
Apparently
didn't
it's
enjoy
one
it,
whole
but
point.
it wasn't an utter waste of time, but you didn't enjoy it.
You know,
so it would take, the movie would physically have to cause Gene pain.
Exactly.
It, like, if say he was watching it and the surround sound shorted out and it electrocuted him, that might be a 5.
no,
I didn't
okay.
enjoy it, and it also caused me pain.
All right, here's the criteria for a 5. If I saw a movie that was completely devoid of reason and thought, completely devoid of any sort of aspiration, and also wasn't enjoyable, then I think it would be a 5 wipe movie. Maybe like Made in America. That might be a 5 for me.
I have a question. So if we weren't paid to review this movie and therefore required to watch the entire thing, would you guys have shut this off?
I would have walked away 15 minutes. But I love Richard.
Wait, if we weren't covering this for the podcast? Oh yeah, I wouldn't watch this movie.
Yeah, I did it for Richard.
So, I mean, that's a 5 wipe. If you would just be like, I can't even sit through this anymore, I am shutting it off.
Oh no, because I would shut off at about a 4 wipe. So anyway, Big D, 5 wipes. Kerri Gross, 5 wipes. Gene Lyons, 4.5 wipes, making this an average of 4.83 repeating on the Shat scale.
Okay, so we're going to get hate mail now, and I think we deserve it. This is a travesty. This movie is now tied in the 75 spot with Willow and Speed 2.
Where it belongs.
No, we don't. Hold on. Willow, would you rather watch Willow or this, Gene?
Oh, I would watch Willow 100 times before watching this.
Yeah, this should be at the last spot. This should be literally the last movie.
Yeah, I'm just glad that this is worse than Highlander, or our friends at Great Northern Radio's head would explode, and that would be it. We would get unfollowed.
All right, so there you have it. 4.83 in the 74 slot of all of our movies.
Mm-hmm. It is down there at the bottom. This was not one of Sutter Cane's successful movies.
There you are, Richard. You did it to yourself. Let's try to drive away from this one, break through the loop, and get out of Hobbs End. What are we going to watch next?
Thank God. After this one, and Richard, I'm sorry. We do like you, and we really do. This isn't. I wanted to like this. I did. I felt guilty. So hopefully you don't hate us, or that we ruined your childhood memories of this movie. But next week we get to, we just had a really bad bite of something. We had a mouthful of spoiled milk. So we're going to rinse it out. And next week we got something super exciting. It's a category I've been waiting for a long time. Almost 2,000 votes, just shy of the 2,000 mark. It is the best of Patrick Swayze. And the nominees were Red Dawn, Ghost, Roadhouse, The Outsiders, Youngblood, Black Dog, and the winner is one of the movies I've been waiting for a very, very long time. So stay to the end for the trailer, and you'll see us next week, but this is going to be a good one.
All right, Big D, looking forward to that. Guys, do we have any shout-outs?
Yes, we have a few shout-outs here. We have one for John Dunn. He's the high school English teacher in Virginia. From Instagram, we got PG Medrano. Does that sound right? Medrano?
PJ. You butchered initials.
No, you
butchered initials.
You said PG.
Oh, sorry.
And then you said BJ.
PJ Medrano. And then we have J Noble's Fit. Those are from Instagram. So thank you guys. Appreciate you listening, and share with a friend.
All right. That concludes this edition of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. Facebook, search for Shat the Movies Podcast. The website is shatthemovies.com. Our email address, where you can give us ideas for future categories or movies that we should cover, or just give us feedback on what you've heard on the podcast. Hosts at shatthemovies.com. If you're a big fan of In the Mouth of Madness and want to explain what we got wrong, write to us. We'd love to hear it. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. Also, you can check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we just wrapped up Westworld Season 2. We also review Taboo, American Gods, and Game of Thrones. You can find all of that on our website at shatontv.com. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, Kerri Gross, and Roger Roper, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
Can I buy you guys a drink? Guess not.
Patrick Swayze is
Dalton.
I thought you'd be bigger.
Opinions vary.
When he's around, anything can happen.
How's a guy like you end up a bouncer?
Just lucky, I guess.
And usually does.
If somebody gets in your face, I want you to be nice.
Don't be rude.
Ask him to walk, but be nice.
Help this gentleman to the door.
Until it's time to not be nice.
So says the fighting philosopher.
He may be hard to handle.
I keep talking, you're gonna go off thinking I'm a nice guy.
I know you're not a nice guy.
But he's easy to like.
What's the matter, Dalton? Don't you like women?
The worst I ever had was wonderful.
He's not what you'd expect.
I thought you'd be bigger.
But there's one thing you can count on. He's the best friend a good time ever had.
Aren't you guys tired?
Doc, I'll get all the sleep I need when I'm dead. This is my town.
I'm not afraid of him.
I guess you'll be having that fire sale now, all right? You got your hands full, kid.
I just think I'm looking at a dead man.
Patrick Swayze.
For that line of work, I thought you'd be bigger.
Gee, I've never heard that before.
Roadhouse.